All right, peeps, welcome to the Culture and People cast. Nicole, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay. I'm an HR compensation consultant. I have a business that's really focused on compensation issues. I've worked in this area of HR for over 20 years, but I really want to work with small to medium-sized organizations who could really use my assistance in looking at the pay of their people, how they're compensating, how the performance is related to that pay, incentive plan design, and a lot of the things under that umbrella, including diversity review.
Yes, I was gonna say, I was hoping you'd mention that because that's such a timely need for these organizations who, whether it's for gender or race, need to be doing an audit of, you think you're doing okay, but could we be doing better? And most of the time, I think in my experience, I'd say, yeah, you could be doing better.
Well, doing better and just being able to respond to their employees' inquiries and say that, yes, we've had an objective review and we feel if there were some inequities, we're working to correct them, or we feel confident that we're paying to market, we're paying internally equitable. So I think, with the companies need to justify it to their employees, and I think more so now than ever.
Yeah, agreed. What do you think the best thing for you is about working in this people and culture space? What do you enjoy most?
Well, I really enjoy the interaction, and it is a dynamic environment. I mean, it's really where you kind of need to keep appraised on what are people worried about. What are the things that we need to address? And many times it's things that you read in the news or in current events. However, I mean, I do enjoy being able to be that expert, if you say. So for somebody who said, yes, I've been there, I've experienced that situation before, and hopefully I can add some advice to what you're going through.
Yeah, for sure. And your work, Nicole, in terms of compensation, that isn't everything. Like money isn't everything to everyone, right? That might not be their number one motivator, but it is certainly part of the fair and equitable exchange that an employee and an employer make. And so I think the work around compensation, I don't know that I've always given it the credit that it's due in terms of how impactful it is to people and culture. And so I'm hearing other leaders that work in this space that engaging employees is a challenge. What are your thoughts?
Well, right, and I was just about to comment when you're making those thoughts is that really for so long compensation or people's pay has been this black box. How is it determined? How and really then that misconception that it's just that the manager just pulls a number out of the hat, or it's just you paid this because I like you or not. Well, no, we do an analysis. We look at market data. We want to be able to justify and actually give the managers those tools. So the managers can have those conversations with their employees, because you're absolutely right. The engagement of people, of individuals, will tie directly with how they feel they're being paid, how fairly they feel they're being paid. And unless a manager has and we do webinars regularly to be able to inform the managers. Well, no, we do a strenuous review, review the market data, review how you're being paid to market data, how your performance impacts that, how you're being paid to your peers. That managers need to have those conversations, because that in itself will lead to more engagement when people feel they're being paid fairly.
Yeah, and that fairness of pay impacts the culture and the engagement of individuals. And so it's good to know that. So tactically speaking then, Nicole, what advice would you give to organizations who want to advance their people strategy or evolve their culture, maybe even specifically using compensation as a motivator?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we really need to, all kinds of starts out with setting the goals, which I know is big on the many organizations' culture. But you want to set the goals so that what that person does is tying into the overall success of the organization, and that cascading goals idea really is impactful. And then once you're assessing their performance, so take a step back here. So you have the corporate goals, and then you have the manager's goals, and then you have the employee. Then everybody feels they have a part, or if the communication is there, that employees, how does their role fit into the overall scheme of the success of the company? And then when they're assessed on that goal, then their pay is tied to their performance. And so I think it just logically, I think people will be more engaged. People will want, nobody goes to work saying that they don't want to do a good job. Everybody goes to work thinking that, yeah, they want to have something that's relevant, that's impactful. I mean, many of the self-help books and the organizational design, cultural improvement books that I've read do talk about you want your roles to be relevant. You want your roles to be, you know, that you're making a difference in the world. But you also need to assess that performance. And then as you assess that performance, are they being paid in relationship to what they've gotten done, and do they know that? And so I think that's engaging, and that really in the organizations I've seen, that really does help their productivity too.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen this, Nicole, but a lot of the organizations or owners or founders that I work with will at times feel maybe overwhelmed by when I'm saying, well, if you really want to change something, here's some things that you can do. And so we might say, well, if you really want to change some things in this case, why don't you do this, compensation review to understand, fair and equitable pay within your organization so that you can engage your people with that data. But what you're saying is tie their compensation and their goals to the organization. And that's a twofer, right? That's a win-win in the sense that now we're getting more alignment around compensation and we're aiming their performance where it should be, which is definitely related to the goals and objectives of the organization. And that sounds like, okay, right? Duh. But most organizations aren't doing that very well.
No, a base pay and incentive plans.
Yeah. Right.
And many times, the goals, the individual's goals from an incentive plan too are so totally unrelated. And granted, you're going to need some self-development performance goals or some goals throughout the year that may not tie to the overall success of the organization. But clearly, you want to have your sales incentive would be obviously tied to productivity. But although sometimes there's nuances where it's only tied on widgets, the number of widgets that you sell, not really how much more money you're bringing in for the organization, for those for-profit individuals.
Yeah, agreed. Great advice, Nicole. So what other leaders like yourself would you want to acknowledge or even recommend as a guest on the cast?
Well, I've had some great mentors along the way. I mean, one of my first bosses was this Dave Maurer, who I worked with at M&I. He would always tell me, and my lessons learned from him was, okay, I was young in my career, and you know how you always have that tendency to whine about something. You go in their office and, I don't like how this is happening, and he'd say, stop right there. Don't whine to me about something unless you have a solution.
Ooh, yeah.
And I thought that was a great lesson. And really, I think, and maybe many office settings that I've been to, a lot of time and energy is wasted on this bickering and whining. And okay, take a step back. How can you improve it? What are some suggestions? You're not getting anywhere, and we're wasting a lot of time by this, chatter. So that was a great lesson. Actually, two of the leaders at A.O. Smith, Ajita Rajenda and Kevin Wheeler, who followed him, were so genuinely honest with their staff and with all the employees. When they had all employee meetings, they were generally open and honest, and really wanted to get to know how I felt. And it wasn't a direct report by any means. There was many levels in between. But I did feel that they were very positive, even when it wasn't a great message to give in some situations. They were very positive, and they genuinely were sincere with their employees. And I think that's helpful for a leader to be empathetic.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So we have Dave and Gina. And who was the third person you mentioned?
Dave, and then Ajita.
Ajita. Okay.
Ajita Rajenda. And then Kevin Wheeler came in as CEO of A.O. Smith after Ajita Rajendra.
Awesome. Great shout outs. So you know what, Nicole, this has been a really informative conversation, and I love it that it's in an area that I don't play in very often, which is that compensation. So thank you for leading the charge over there, because we need great talent like you.
All right. Thank you, Anna.
Yes, for sure.